The Lunaverse by Rainbow Double Dash. Episode 16, The Hero of Oaton by That Guy Fix. Chapter 8, Family. I am not ready for this, Trixie thought as she went out the door to Mayor Chief's Tavern and home to see the populace of Oaton gathered in the town waiting for her. The majority of the village's ponies were present, though Trixie noticed the younger foals were not, probably being kept indoors for safety's sake in case the Bascos returned. However, just about every adult pony in town was there, all eyes on her, her friends, and their mayor. Trixie was usually very collected, even energized in front of crowds. She was an extrovert when it came to being able to put herself on any metaphorical or literal stage. She was a pony who fed on attention like it was a sweet and tasty treat. The problem was that it had to be attention she wanted. There were plenty of kinds of unwanted attention she balked under, or felt nervous or pressure under. Lustful attention, for example, universally made her uncomfortable on the grounds of, "Ew, gross!" Another great example of unwanted attention would be standing before an entire village of ponies who looked at her as a hero above reproach, and tell them that she essentially had been lying to them and was a borderline fraud. Oh, and all of said village ponies happened to have access to sharp, pointing farm instruments. If Trixie had been alone in this, it would have been the moment of a well-timed invisibility spell, and a lot of running would have been called for. That, or more liberal lying, which she was good at. But Trixie wasn't alone. On her right was Raindrops, the Pegasus standing tall and straight next to Trixie, a simple, solid presence of strength and support. On her left was Cheerilee, an encouraging smile on her face that was only enhanced by the confidence in her eyes. Trixie took great comfort in their presence, and found herself wishing all of her friends were here. In a way, they were. Trixie felt rather certain whether it had been Ditzy, Lyra, or Carrot Top who ended up coming with her to Oaton, any one of them would have helped her and stood by her in their own way. They were friends she was deathly afraid of losing. While their bond seemed to be growing, despite their occasional misstep, Trixie continued to harbor the fear she'd make a mistake so bad and irreversible that those bonds would end up severed beyond salvaging. She kept that fear nice and buried, but it was always there. Part of why she so readily dove into the notion of playing Oaton's hero had been to prove to herself that she was the kind of pony worth that friendship she had been forging with the other elements since longest night, which made dropping the act of playing a hero a terrifying prospect for her. But it needed to be done. Just one look at Cheerilee and Raindrops on either side of her was enough to know that. They both had complete confidence in her. She wasn't going to fail their confidence now. She was going to tell these ponies before her who she really was, and what she was going to do, regardless of whether or not they accepted or forgave her for the act. Time to drop the curtain on the performance, and clear the smoke of mirrors from the stage. No more illusions. "Pony folk of Oaton!" she began, not quite as bombastically throwing her voice like she normally would, and said, "There are things I have to tell you. Things I owe it to you all to tell you." There were a few murmurs among the crowd, many of the villagers giving her questioning side looks. They probably were noting her more serious and even somber tone, as opposed to the loud, boisterous mannerisms she had spoken with when she had first arrived. One of the villagers, Trixie thought his name was Spitshine, took a step forward, his eyes hesitant but hopeful.
"We've all been wondering, Lady Trixie, about the past day. Why you haven't gotten rid of the guilt yet, and why you kind of seemed to run off last night when that critter was tearing things up."
He looked behind him, as if looking for approval, getting a few odds from an otherwise subdued crowd.
"But you don't gotta explain yourself to us. We trust you."
Those words cut, even though Trixie knew that wasn't the intent. Even in their doubts about their hero, they were still trying to trust her, give her the benefit of the doubt. A small part of her even thought to grasp that straw offered. Take the easy way out and avoid having to tell the truth. She never really considered the truth more than a subjective concept anyway, mutable with the right perspectives. But no. She decided to do this, so time to get it done. She swallowed her fear and addressed the crowd. Your trust is appreciated more than I can say. And because of that trust, I need to come out with this. She took a deep breath. Now or never. I'm not entirely who I claim to be. She saw confused looks spread amongst the ponies before her, like an unpleasant wave. A few questioning murmurs started up, but Trixie pressed on, her pace of speech increasing with her rising nervousness as the entire village's attention became undivided and rooted on her, and the air began to feel thick in her lungs. Well, my first time here I was rather drunken. Sort of made myself to be out more than I was. Now a few voices rose louder than the crowd's, ponies giving voices to the thoughts they had been guarding in their minds, hoping their hero would wash away the need to speak them.
What does this mean? You are the princess's apprentice, right? Of course you are,
said one of the older Earth ponies. Strictly speaking, yes, but... Trixie tried to explain, but the Oaton farmers kept on talking.
You tried to save us, though. You're a hero. You stopped the lumber guild last time. You can do it again. You have to,
cried a motherly alien, staring at Trixie wide-eyed. I did, sort of. Look, it's complicated, Trixie began again, trying to avoid the pony's eyes. You have to be kidding us, right? You have to be, because you're the same Trixie I remember seeing swagger out here last year and showed those guild jerks all kinds of trouble, said one of the younger stallions with confidence, though it almost sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Look, I am Trixie. I'm just not... Trixie once again tried to say, feeling her heart rate increasing with her nerves and frustration.
Of course she's kidding with us, you dope. She's just trying to be modest, because she pushed herself last night and got a little tuckered out. Ain't that right, Lady Trixie?
Said Spitsign. But if you let me finish...
But why didn't she just step that big lizard before Picturesque got hurt? I figured you were just trying to be nice to the thing. But is it really because you couldn't?
Asked Potato Shack, looking thoughtful. He didn't like the thoughts he was having. That's because I'm sure it was some part of an amazing plan she had. You'll see, said a young mare, who was still looking at Trixie with admiration, rather than growing doubts of others around her. That hurt her even more than the ones now looking at her with doubt.
Enough!
She roared, the broad unicorn taking several steps forward, so he was no longer hanging out behind Trixie, but instead was facing his villagers directly, giving them a stern look.
Y'all quiet down and let her finish what she has to say. Don't want to hear any more interruptions. Now, once she's said her piece, then you can wag all your tongues all you want.
The ponies of Oaton did as the mayor bade, though Trixie was good enough at reading a crowd to tell the tension among them was high. They wanted to believe in her, as she knew that her next words could easily deflate that faith. Her legs were feeling weak, as she was starting to breathe fast. A small brush of a wingtip on her shoulder caused a brief glance at Raindrops. It wasn't the first time her friend had offered a supporting gesture, and before Raindrops could withdraw the wing, Trixie gave her friend a small smile, letting her know she didn't mind. Personal space aside, she welcomed the gesture. At this point, she needed all the support she could get. There's no easy way to say this, she began again, trying to steady her voice. So, I'll just say it plainly. Yes, my name is Trixie Lulamoon. I was here 1 year ago and got caught up in the affair between your village and the Lumber Guild. But I claim to be more than I was. I claim to be a great and powerful unicorn, an influential member of Princess Luna's Night Court. This was a lie. As far as magic goes, I'm above average. She didn't really like admitting that, but even Trixie, in her deepest bouts of egotism, knew her talents in magic, while extensive, were still limited in scope and overall power. I'm skilled, but no more. For now, working on the great and powerful part, and haven't gotten quite good at illusions, if I do say so myself. A soft elbow from Raindrops. Yeah, anyway, as for the Night Court, I'm merely the representative assigned to Ponyville. I have no real title and next to zero influence. Back then, I didn't even have that small title. I was just Princess Luna's apprentice. That in and of itself gives me no power. The princess grants me no special favor because I'm her student. I'm hardly her right hoof mater. My saving of Oaton last year was the result of chance and circumstances, and me being very, very drunk. She paused briefly to take a few calming breaths. The crowd of ponies before her was silent, and for the most part their expressions were about what she expected. Stunned, disbelieving, and yes, disappointed. A few even angry. The look of ponies who were having the magic of the illusion pulled away, and seeing the trick for what it was. Trixie closed her eyes briefly before continuing. No point stopping now, even though the urge to turn herself invisible was stronger than ever. I perpetuated the lie of my power yesterday when I came here to Oaton. I could offer any number of excuses why. None of them matter. It is the reason, however, that I haven't just removed the Lumber Guild or the Copper Pouring family. Because I can't. Not just by walking up and telling them to leave. I don't have that kind of authority. To get them to stop, I need hard evidence and them committing a crime. Without that, I can't stop them from damming your river. I and my friends have been looking for such evidence, but we need more time. The basilisk attack. I'm sorry I wasn't able to stop it sooner, and that I didn't have the kind of magic I made myself out to have. Those of you who saw me gallop away like I did, it was because I was chasing the pony who was controlling the basilisk. That got a rather immediate response of angry murmurs and louder outbursts, none of which were directed at her, so much as the notion of some pony controlling the basilisk intentionally setting in on their village. Trixie had briefly debated whether to tell that part of the story, but she needed to explain what she did, so she didn't think she just ran away. She once again silenced the crowd and nodded for her to go on. I chased this pony into the forest, but wasn't able to capture them. In fact, I barely managed to escape being turned to stone myself, if not for my friend's help. She nodded at Raindrops. Which brings us to what happens now. I don't really expect forgiveness for lying to you about who I am, but not everything I said was a lie. I am a bearer of the element of magic, as each of my friends also bear an element of harmony. There's no authority or power that comes with that, but safeguarding Equestria from threats seems to come with the territory. More than that, though, I'm here to help Oaton because one of your own, a young filly with a lot of courage in her, came to my doorstep asking for help. I still fully intend on making good my word to her. My friends and I will protect your village. That is the truth. The next words she said were just a soft whisper. If you still want us here, that is. So there it was, all out. That silly little thing she generally tried to avoid, except under dire circumstances. The truth. It felt oddly good, now that it was done with. She felt lighter, which was nice because her hopes were still shaking a little. She had enough collapsing in front of ponies for 1 week. 1 lifetime, actually. In fact, Trixie was making a mental amendment to avoid exhausting herself to personal collapse from here on. A rather traitorous part of her mind was taking bets on how long that would last. She waited for the angry shouts, cries of betrayal and condemnation. Instead, what she got was silence. She looked out across the numerous faces of ponies who, just the other day, had surrounded her with expressions of jubilant and utter joy at their hero's return. Now saw a kaleidoscope of apprehension, concern, disappointment, and fear. The ponies of Oaton weren't angry. They were afraid, because yesterday they felt they had a chance, that they had a hero look out for them. Now Trixie could tell. They were wondering if they had any hope at all. Trixie thought she would have preferred to get angry at her, that they ranted and railed at her for lying to them. Seeing this dejection and despair in ponies who had been so lively and joyful just the other day was a punch straight to the gut for the show mare.
So,
said Potato Jack, clearly trying to force some kind of enthusiasm into his voice as he looked out about his fellow visitors.
can't say I speak for every pony here, but I kind of feeling a little lost here. But basically, you're still planning to help us out, right?
Last what I said, spoke up Mayor Chief before Trixie could respond, and found herself giving him a surprised look as the mayor spoke loudly for every pony to hear.
We're far from done, and we ain't laying down for the Lumber Guild or their noble leaseholders. Our food stores ain't empty yet, and our window for plant isn't gone yet either. So that means we still got a chance.
Though Chief was throwing a lot of confidence into his voice, and there was no lack of fire in it, Trixie noted the ponies Oaton still looked unconvinced, still wavering with fear and doubt. She couldn't let that stand. If the ponies of Oaton needed to have their hope rekindled, she'd do exactly that. She had to give them something, some kind of sign that, even if she wasn't the hero they thought she was, she could still help them. I may not be everything you thought I was, but neither I nor my friends are giving up. We do have a plan that may well give us a chance. Before that, though, I intend to restore the ponies that were turned to stone. Can you do that? Asked one of the Oaton ponies, a younger brown mare. You just admitted you're not powerful. Maybe not powerful, put in Cheerilee suddenly, but quite a bit more talented than most I've ever met when it comes to learning magic. She'll have them fixed up. Don't you doubt it.
So, are you really just a school teacher then? Asked Bitshine. Not a royal guard or anything?
Cheerilee laughed slightly, waving off. Of course I'm a school teacher. I just wasn't always a school teacher. And she's not a shadowbolt? Asked another pony, pointing at Raindrops. The Jasmine Pegasus rolled her eyes.
Never said I was. But I saw you last night. You did this weird flipping thing with a kick, and we're all like, "Wata!" in the Basilisk's face. I know a little iron hoof. That's it. I'm just a weather pony. But just a weather pony,
Raindrops said in no uncertain tone or terms. To answer the original question, said Trixie, her heart rate getting back to something resembling normal now. She had something to focus on. I believe I can counter the petrification. I just need to study the spell and practice it. I should have your fellow villagers back to normal by this evening.
Well, what are you going to do then?
Asked Potato Sack, his face still echoing the distraught lack of certainty that seemed to be blanketing the Oaton citizens. Looks that Trixie desperately wanted to somehow wipe away.
You just said you can't get rid of the Lumber Guild. And who's that cursed rat of a pony that sent that monster on our homes? Cried another.
Trixie was hesitant to get specific on Tarnis's identity. Last thing she needed was for these ponies to get into their heads to try to go after Tarnis themselves. Not only was Trixie far from certain that Tarnis was in control of her own actions, it wouldn't serve the cause of resolving this matter to have Count Shiny's sister get caught by a bunch of angry and scared farm ponies. Trixie wanted to capture Tarnis herself anyway, to have some kind of leverage to get Count Shiny to cooperate. I can't get rid of the Lumber Guild because they are under the Copper Coin's control, and unfortunately their actions are legal by Night Court law for several reasons. 1. They have legal permits this time. If they didn't, the Copper Coins wouldn't even be here. 2. Oaton is unregistered as a town. By law, that means this land isn't owned by any pony other than the controlling nobles in the province it's part of. As for who let the Basilisk loose, I can't say for sure. That last bit was carefully worded. She didn't say she didn't know, but says that she couldn't say. Which was true. She couldn't. Tarnis was clearly operating a few ponies short of a full-drawn carriage, and Trixie had a feeling those whispers she heard in the forest had something to do with that. Mayor Chief was giving her a slightly irked look.
Our lack of registry is intentional, Miss Trixie. Oaton was founded by ponies, our forebears, who wanted a quiet place away from the politics of the Night Court as nobles.
Trixie sighed. The Night Court deserves to serve Equilistria. If your town isn't registered, then how can that system work?
Our forebears from centuries ago didn't want to be a part of that system,
neither do we, said Chief, though Trixie noted a certain lack of conviction in his words. We're just simple farmers who want to live our lives without having ponies who think themselves better than the rest of us, telling what to do. That's not what the Night Court is for, said Trixie, or began to say, but there were numerous other voices raising among the Oaton ponies. We've done just fine without any nobles meddling with us. This is our home. There aren't any ponies who should be able to lord it over us. Cheerilee leaned in close to Trixie, saying in a quiet tone, Got this impression when we first got here, that these ponies aren't that fond of the nobility. Trixie tried to suppress the urge to face off. Okay, fine. A teensy bit of distrust is pretty common, but the Night Court is fundamental to how Equestria functions. If their town was properly registered, it'd at least give them grounds to stand on for lodging a complaint concerning the Copper Coin family neglecting their needs. There'd be piles of red tape in the way, sure, but at least the process could be started. Her words were spoken softly, so only Cheerilee could hear. She was in no mood to argue with Oaton's populace on the pros and cons of ensuring their town was officially recognized as such. Admittedly, it was probably too small to rate a representative, but at least Mayor Sheaf's title as mayor could have been made official and granted him some measure of ability to look after Oaton's interests. She was curious as to why Sheaf didn't sound like he brought his own words. She found herself wishing she was wearing the enchanted glasses, so she could get an idea of what Sheaf might be thinking. Speaking of which, where had those gone off to? She noticed Raindrops wasn't wearing them. For now, I'll direct the matter, she said finally to Sheaf. But if I'm going to be able to do much of anything to help Oaton within legal bounds, it'd be made easier if this town was officially registered. We haven't needed it until now, and I'm not convinced we will. We're just fine living our own isolated lives, he said. There it was again. That lack of conviction. Trixie's ears twisted hearing it. Not long after that, Oaton's ponies returned to their daily businesses, though with a subdued air. Many of them still looked at her as if she was their sole deliverance, others with encouragement. But even the most hopeful of smiles was darkened by clear seeds of doubt and worry. They now knew things weren't going to be easy, and that the mare they pinned their hopes on was, ultimately, just a mare. At least, Trixie hoped they understood that. Now it was just a matter of not failing them. Well, that wasn't too painful, right? Asked Cheerilee once she, Trixie, and Raindrops gotten back to the tavern. Trixie picking up the spellbook and flipping it open to the page with the depetrification spell. Trixie gave her friend a look. I'm feeling better, but that was terrifying. I'm still a little shocked he didn't just run us out of town. They're trying to hold on to some hope, Trixie. And right now, we're all we got, said Raindrops. But at least now they know what the real score is. Trixie frowned as she began reading the spell, trying not to be distracted, but feeling the hat on her head as if it were quite a bit heavier than it really was. So the pony folk of Oaton knew the real score. But did a certain little filly? It had been hard enough swallowing her fear to speak to the villagers, but she dreaded having to do the same with Bushel. Bushel will hear what had been said from others, no doubt. But shouldn't Trixie owe it to the filly to do this face to face, rather than rely on others to tell Bushel? At the very least, I could make it up to her by curing her mother, Trixie thought, and redoubled her efforts to study the spell. The diagrams and arcane words were so sterile, so pointlessly mundane, they didn't even seem like magic to Trixie. But she forced on, forcing her mind to try and properly visualize the ways to weave magic together. It'd be so much easier if she just had some point to demonstrate this to her for real. But she had to make do with this. All right, then, said Cheerilee, fizzing a mug of ale and putting it next to the 4 other empty tankards next to her. If I'm going to convince Shiny to let me stay at the lumber camp, then I better get going. Are you going to be okay on the road? Asked Raindrops. What if this Tarnus mare attacks you while you're walking there? Cheerilee waved a hoof dismissively. I think I'll be fine. Tarnus has to rest sometime too. Even if she does show up, that'll just give me a chance to try and talk to her. Maybe I could get her to give up. Raindrops didn't look like she was any more at ease, and flapped her wings tensely. Still, I'd better fly along. Keep an eye on you. Be careful, said Trixie to the Pegasus. You don't want to be spotted by any pony at the camp. I'll fly high and find a cloud to use as cover, like you said. That should be okay that way. Trixie nodded, barely looking up from her spellbook. Then I'll see about the petrified ponies here, and then head for the camp when night falls. If Tarnus is going to attack, it'll probably be after dark. Cheerilee begun to turn to leave, but she halted after a step, turning her head to look at Trixie with one eye. The normally upbeat schoolteacher suddenly looking sad and contemplative. Trixie, about Tarnus. Just how bad was she? Shiny told me she wasn't all there in the head. She sent a basilisk to attack a village just because she wanted it to bring you to her, Trixie said, probably more bluntly than she had to. But so she quickly added, yeah, pretty bad. But it might not be her fault. Not entirely. Not her fault, Cheerilee repeated, eyes looking a little distant. Yes, not just hers. She blinked as if realizing she had been talking to herself, and smiled in a normal and cheerful fashion. Well, we'll manage to knock a little sense into her. Then me and her can have a proper heart-to-heart. Yes. Now off I go to manipulate one of my oldest friends into possibly endangering his employees so we can capture his sister, also one of my oldest friends, and hold her hostage to extort him into abandoning an animal smuggling ring. Well, this weekend has been the pits. Trixie frowned, looking a little downcast. It really does sound rather bad when you put it like that. Don't worry, Trixie. This is just a messed up situation for every pony. I'm not blaming you for your plan. It's a good plan. Just wish my own friends from back in the day weren't so neck-deep involved in all this. But I'm on board for this. All the way. Before the two left, Raindrops gave Trixie an encouraging nod and said, Good luck with the spell. Be careful on your end. Don't take any risks you don't have to when you sneak into the camp. And if anything goes wrong... She tapped the silver ear clasps. Trixie smiled at her and mimicked the gesture with her own ear clasp. I know just which pony to call to come slipping in and pull me out of the frying pan, Trixie said, and Raindrops nodded, following Cheerilee out of the tavern. Trixie watched them go, almost letting herself start to worry about them again, but she forced those nagging fears aside. Things would work out. She was sure of it. Somehow. For the moment, she focused all her mind upon the spellbook in front of her, letting the world drop away from her periphery awareness. When Bushel woke up, she didn't feel so good. Her head felt like the one time she snuck a drink of Pa's whiskey on a dare from Milkdrop. Ball had been quite furious with her and had grounded her for a week. Bushel couldn't quite stop another sob escaping her. The sharp memory of her mother's stone hooves, hard and cold, wrapped around her, rose in her mind. She wanted to be a strong filly. She was the oldest of her siblings, after all. She was supposed to be the tough one, right? Breadcrumb and Milkdrop had cried when they had heard about what happened, and Bushel had wanted to be strong enough to hold and comfort her little brother and sister. But she couldn't. She was too busy crying herself. She rubbed her aching head and looked around. She was laying on the couch in her home's living room. Everything was fairly quiet, though she could hear a few voices downstairs talking in the tavern. She recognized one of the voices as Trixie's. Bushel gulped. She didn't know what to do or say in front of Trixie anymore. Her mind was a tangled swirl of questions. Questions she was afraid of the answers to. Why had Trixie run away like that? Why hadn't Trixie been able to stop the basilisk? Why hadn't Trixie protected her mother? She was... Bushel wanted to believe, so badly, that Trixie was every inch the hero the song and stories made her out to be. Bushel knew she shouldn't doubt Trixie, yet the feeling had been planted in her, rooted as firmly as the stone her mother had been turned into. She even left Trixie's hat behind. At first, because she had been too deeply distraught over her mother to remember it. Then later, because she was too ashamed to hold on to it, and had asked her father to return it to Trixie's room. She didn't feel like she had a right to carry Trixie's hat, as long as she felt she had these doubts. and hearing Trixie's voice, mixed in with those voices of her friends down in the tavern, Bristol felt the need to huddle down and hide herself, because he didn't quite know how to face or talk to Trixie now. It didn't help that she had this splitting headache.
Maybe I should go to my special spot in the forest,
she thought. Whenever she felt really bad about something, or was scared, or it was just because she wanted to be alone for a while, she had a place in the forest she liked to go. She hadn't been there for a long time, though, because it had been so long since she felt this scared or worried. She'd been trying to be a stronger filly for her brother and sister, and to prove to Ma and Pa that she could be given more responsibility. Hadn't it been, close to a year since he'd gone to the forest? Yes. That had been right when the Lumber Guild was first shown up, and Pa had been angry all the time, and been arguing with Ma about something involving registration or some such thing. Bristol had just wanted to be by herself for a bit, so she had gone to the forest. Strange. Bristol couldn't remember much else beyond that. She'd gotten pretty sick later that night, and hadn't come out of it until Trixie's magic had saved her. Bristol had always regretted never being able to thank Trixie for helping her back then. Now she was afraid to even be seen by the Azure Unicorn. Despite how much she wanted to go to the forest to be alone and sort out what she was feeling, she knew it was dangerous. Pa had forbidden her to go outside of the town because of the basilisks, and now having seen the beast and what it could do, Bristle's desire to go to the forest was warring with a healthy dose of fear. Eventually, the talking died down for a bit, and Bristol, curious, crept down the stairs and poked her head around the edge of the wall to peek into the tavern. Trixie was by herself, reading a book, and the tavern was empty. Trixie seemed to be concentrating heavily on the book, not looking up at anything. Bristol watched as the door to the tavern opened, and her Pa walked inside, trying towards Trixie's table. Bristol hunkered down, doing her best to remain hidden.
You know,
her Pa said, sitting opposite of Trixie,
my ponies, they're good folk.
Yes, they are. They should have been angrier with me for lying to them.
Don't think they ain't shaken up, Trixie. They're scared and angry. But they're keeping a lid on it because they want to believe in their hero, no matter who she is or isn't.
But they're also reaching a breaking point. You need to show them something, some kind of result. Otherwise, this is going to boil over bad.
I will. Tonight, this should all come to an end, one way or another. Right now, I have to focus on learning the spell, Mayor Sheath. You know, for your wife and that other family.
The Threshers.
Yes, them. I do want to talk to you about that whole registration business. Why are all of you so adamant about it? There has to be a reason beyond us distrusting the Night Court.
Bristol, despite herself, had begun slowly pad forward with quiet, light steps, trying to listen in better. What were her Pa and Trixie talking about? It sounded kind of familiar. Bristol then recalled. This sounded a lot like the conversation she overheard her Pa and Ma have once. She was clearly at the bottom of the stairs now, blue trails twisting above her crouched form. She could see her Pa and Trixie clearly now. Her Pa wearing a sour look she didn't usually see unless he'd done something really bad. Why was he looking at Trixie like that?
Trixie, you need to stop this line of questioning. Oaton isn't registered, and isn't going to be registered. Even if some of us don't have issues with Equestria's government, or even some of us wanted to connect again with the world. Most of the ponies of Oaton keep to the ways of our forebears. For your own sake, just avoid pushing the manor.
Trixie was wearing a small frown, and Bristol, despite her fears and worries, found she wanted to make that frown go away. Trixie was a lot more fun when she was smiling. Bristol felt the guilt once again at the doubting unicorn.
Fine,
Trixie said, tossing a hoof up in exasperation.
But you're hurting your chances of getting your river back by being stubborn about this.
We got it back last time. The Lumber Guild was forced out here. No registration required on our part,
pointed out Sheath.
That was because the copper coins had full authority to oust the group that was operating on their land without permits. Oaton's well-being had nothing to do with it. But now, the copper coins are the ones setting all this up. As long as Oaton remains unregistered as a settlement, it leaves you at their mercy. unless my friends and I can pull off our plan.
Then you better succeed, I'm thinking. Deadpan Sheath, slowly rising from the table. Because if you don't, me and my opponents will have to do things our own way to protect our homes.
What's that supposed to mean?
Mean simply this, Trixie. Don't fail.
It was early evening, and Trixie was anxious. Cheerilee and Raindrops had kept in touch via their earpieces, from which Trixie had learned that things were going far into a plan. Cheerilee had been a little sketchy on the details, but apparently had convinced Count Shining to allow her into the camp again. She also mentioned she had the enchanted glasses on her, having picked them up after Raindrops dropped them during the scuffle with the basilisks to keep them from getting crushed. Cheerilee didn't have any specific plan to use them unless an opportunity presented itself, but at least Trixie knew where they were. Raindrops, for her part, was extremely bored. Staying hidden above the lumber yard on a cloud, she had to keep slowly moving around and changing their shape, so when ponies looked up, they didn't think they were seeing the same cloud all the time. Trixie was eager to get out of here and start snooping around the camp, wanting to begin right around the time night would fall. But she still had to do this one last thing. She practiced the spell all afternoon, but still wasn't certain she had it right. Leaning from a book wasn't just natural to her. However, she had to try. It wasn't so much that there was a time limit on curing the petrified ponies, not literally, but she wanted to give the citizens of Oaton some kind of hope after having to deflate herself in front of them earlier. Some proof that their hero was able to do something for them. Piscaresque and the Thresher family had been moved on to an empty house, so no pony would accidentally damage them. The Thresher's foals had escaped unharmed, but the mother and father had been turned to stone. This, apparently, had happened not long after the Lumberkill's arrival, and the only confirmed attack of the basilisks had been the previous night. Where did the Threshers live? Asked Trixie, as Mayor Sheaf escorted her to the house.
Oaton isn't just these houses here, he explained. There are a few farmsteads out over the hills to the west, or north and south along the forest edge. The Thresher's place was to the southeast, right next to the forest. It's normally not a dangerous place. Pretty timid, actually, given it's part of Everfree. Occasionally, ponies might claim to hear strange noises coming from inside the tree line. That's been the rumor since as long as I can remember. The Thresher's being attacked was our first sign of the Basilisk's presence.
Strange noises. Like whispering? Trixie's contemplative frown ended once they got inside the house and saw the three statue ponies. Piscaresque was just as she remembered seeing her last, sitting on her haunches, arms out like they were wrapped around something, looking upward at an angle with fear and defiance etched on her stone features. The Threshers, much like most of Oaton's populace, were earth ponies. Trixie immediately began to pick up on oddities concerning them, mainly their stances and expressions. The stallion of the pair was standing on 3 legs, his right foreleg up as if he was about to punch something with his hoof. His face was turned aside, as if something was blinding him, and his expression much pain. The mare had her head down, legs bent as she had been in a gallop, or at least starting to gallop, face also screwed up in an expression of pain. They were found at their home, like this? Trixie asked.
When their foals came running to town crying, we all went out to look, explained Sheath. Found Quick Thresher out in his field, and saw Thresher just outside the back door of the house. The foals were too hysterical to get much of a story out of them, other than they heard a roar, their father yelling for their mother to get them out of the house, and then their mother pushing them out the door. They didn't look back or see much of anything.
So, no pony actually saw the basilisk?
Trixie pressed, trying to pick her brain for any details she could recall concerning how a basilisk's petrifying stare actually worked. Cheerilee was the one who seemed to have to bone up on the subject, and Trixie was regretting not following suit. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Thresher obviously did, said she flatly. What else could it have been but the basilisk? Trixie removed her hat, smoothing out the wrinkles in the brim before putting it back on.
There is more than one way for a pony to be turned to stone, Mayor Sheath. What are the Threshers doing that your life isn't?
What kind of question is that? Sheath asked in a heated voice. Talk sense, Trixie. I'm in no mind for riddles.
Your wife is looking up, presumably straight into the basilisk's eyes. That's normal. A basilisk needs eye contact for its magical stare to take effect. Even not being an expert, I know that much. But look at Mr. Thresher. She's looking to the side, but obviously trying to attack something in front of him. Mrs. Thresher's eyes are on the ground, watching where she's going as she tries to run, presumably away from something. So, I ask you, Mayor Sheath, how did the basilisk turn them into stone? There couldn't have been eye contact in either case here. Sheath was silent for a moment, and then slowly nodded his head, letting out a sigh. I see what you mean. But if a basilisk didn't do this, then what did? I don't know. One possibility, and the one I'm thinking of is the most likely, is that they were turned to stone by a spell.
A spell?
A spell designed to simulate petrification. Transmutation magic.
The mayor who sent the basilisk loose on the town? Trixie blinked, then wiped the surprise off her face quickly, hoping Sheath hadn't noticed.
It's a possibility. If it was a spell, it should still have the aura of the one who cast it infused in stone. I can examine them and see if it's similar to what I felt coming from the pony controlling the basilisk. Shouldn't take more than a minute or two. And later, I'm going to find out just how you knew the pony controlling the basilisk was a mayor, because I know I didn't mention any details about Tarnist, including her gender.
Putting that thought aside, she focused on the Threshers, looking over Mr. Thresher with her horn aligning with magic. With her magic sight active, she looked upon the grained stone for the stallion before her with careful scrutiny. While seeing the auras of an active spell was an easy feat, the traces of magic left over inside the stone were minuscule by this point, enough for the purposes of maintaining the stone while preserving the life of the pony trapped within a state of hibernation so deep it could potentially maintain them indefinitely. It was unnerving to Trixie, because while she was no expert on transmutation spells, she was aware the spell to turn a pony to stone was no low-level cantrip. Whoever cast this was powerful, perhaps powerful enough to control a basilisk? Yet if Tarnus had done this, why bother with a spell at all? Why not use the basilisk to turn the Threshers to stone, if they had seen something they shouldn't have? True to her word, her analysis did not take long. While minuscule, the magic tracers left over in the stone were distinct. Each living creature that utilized magic to any degree left a distinct aura, like a hoofprint. If Tarnus had been the one who cast the spell, Trixie would have recognized the aura, having recently become all too familiar with it.
This magic, it's a Tarnus, she realized.
Its color was a deep blue, deeper than her own. Where Tarnus had magic that was erratic, this magic was smooth, controlled. She didn't recognize it at all, but the feel of magic was definitely that of a unicorn's. If it hadn't been the feel of it, it would have been different. With a sigh, she turned off her magic sight and looked at Sheath.
Well, this confirms they've been turned to a stone by a spell. The magic I'm sensing in them is unicorn magic, no doubt.
But what does that mean, then? Who could have turned them to stone? Sheath had a strange, narrowed-eyed look, as if he was already busy thinking of the possibilities.
A good question. A better question is why some pony would turn them into stone. What did they see that some pony didn't want them talking about?
Sheath's eyes went even narrower. His brow became a deep crease. It had to have been some pony from either the Copper Coins or the Lumber Guild.
Why do you say that?
Because I'm the only unicorn in Oaton, Sheath said. Besides you, of course. So, can you do anything for them? If we restore them, we gotta hear from their own mouths whatever it is they saw. Trixie bit her lip, her shriveled tail swishing out behind her as she thought.
Not immediately. The spell I learned is specifically for countering a basilisk petrification. To undo the spell on the Threshers, I'd need a different spell. I might be able to modify the one I just learned to do the trick, but that'd take another day or so of experimentation.
Sheath nodded solemnly. Then do what you can for my wife. Trixie returned his nod and turned her attention to Picturesque, allowing the forms of the depetrification spell to flow through her mind, then through her horn. Despite the limited amount of time she had to practice this, Trixie managed to weave together the magic and direct it toward the mare. She felt a twinge of fatigue. Even if she rested, the amount she pushed herself yesterday was more than a single day of sleep would cure. Working on familiar magic was more straining than the spells she had all but perfected, and could use a little effort, like invisibility. Breathing slow and steady, she kept the spell together as it watched over Picturesque. And it didn't do anything. Trixie kept a frown off her face, staying focused. She probably didn't get the spell quite right. She tried again, redoubling her effort to make sure each component of the spell went together like she read in the book. Again, no effect. Something wrong? Asked Chief, not bothering to keep his own frown from forming.
Trixie blinked. I'm not sure. Let me try again.
Again, she wove the spell. Only this time, she asserted her magic sight was also active, and carefully examined the spell as it hit Picturesque. Her eyes narrowed. For just a second, she saw the spell she wove distort as it touched Picturesque, its form turning a chaotic swirl of random colors for just an instant before taking effect, or rather trying to and failing.
It's like the way Taurus's magic was different. It's like the magic is breaking down. No, that's not it. The spell is working. It's just not interacting with the magic that's keeping Picturesque a statue like it should. Like I'm putting water in a pool of oil.
Trixie didn't know what that meant, but she was certain this had to do with the forest and its strange whispers. She turned to Sheath.
Mayor Sheath, does Oaton have any stories or legends about that forest?
What? Why suddenly ask about that? Why can't you cure my wife? He asked, seeming more uncomfortable than angry.
The spell isn't turning your wife back to normal, Trixie said, voice heavy, because something inside the magic of the basilisk is making it so my spell won't interact with it. Something very strange, chaotic. Now, you say some villagers have heard strange things in the forest. So have I. The little time I spent in there. I think something is wrong with that forest. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not liking your tone. I know as much as any pony in Oaton knows. The forest is harmless, almost empty. It may be a part of Everfree, but few animals make their homes there, and it's been safe for generations, at least until this basilisk shows up. The noises pony hear are just rumors that have been around for as long as the village. Just the wind whispering through the trees, nothing more. Some ponies just have fun feeling scared sometimes.
You've been there yourself?
Trixie asked, wishing more than ever Cheerilee had taken the glasses. So far, she wasn't reading any outright duplicity on Steve's part, but he was clearly agitated by the conversation. But that could just have to do with the fact that his wife was still a statue. Like a lot of fools, I occasionally played in there when I was young, even though my pa tanned my flank whenever he found out I did. Kind of old hat to not let your fools play in the forest. Tell them not to, but they'll do it anyway. I'm strict on my foes, though mostly just Bushel, about playing in there.
Bushel?
Well, Breadcrumbs is too young yet to get out much like that, and Milkjock's pretty obedient. Bushel, though, I know she played a lot in the forest. I cracked down on her much harder after she got sick a year ago. I never wanted to take the chance to get sick like that again. You never know if she did some foolish thing like eat a plant she shouldn't have had out there. But Trixie's question hadn't been for Sheath. It had been a surprised reaction to seeing the yellow filly in question peeking her head through the window. Bushel made a small yelp. She knows she'd been spotted. It dropped. Trixie hearing a small thump from outside. She turned his head and said, Bushel! Bushel, girl, you get yourself right this instant! Bushel slowly came around to the door, eyes downcast for a second, before they looked up at her father, then slowly over at Trixie. Trixie felt a sharp pain in her chest, as Bushel's eyes teared up, and she looked away from Trixie, eyes going back to looking at the ground.
Sorry, Pa. Sorry, Miss Trixie. I was just curious what you were doing. Then I wanted to see Ma.
Trixie took a deep breath.
She couldn't push the urge to go up, lowering her head so she could look Bushel in the eyes. She couldn't let this filly keep looking at that.
Hey, it's all right. I'll fix your mother soon.
Bushel was silent, eyes still looking to the ground. Trixie couldn't stand it. The filly looked lost and scared, and her voice sounded tiny, distant, and fearful.
Oh, okay.
Trixie couldn't bring herself to leave it at that. Bushel needed something, some kind of proof that things were going to be all right. By Luna's very moon, Trixie intended to give it to her. The only reason the spell wasn't working on Picturesque was because the basilisk mask wasn't acting like that of a normal basilisk. Theoretically, the spell itself was fine. It was just a matter of getting it to interact with the basilisk mask. Trixie raised her head, putting a hoof on Bushel's shoulder, who flinched a bit at the touch, but looked up at Trixie all the same. That filly's wide eyes were filled with fear, doubt, and above all, a desperate want to believe. To believe in Trixie. Trixie wanted to meet that expectation, no matter how lofty or unrealistic it might have been.
Just sit and watch,
Trixie said, and turned back to Picturesque. She was giving her a guarded look, quietly standing by his daughter and putting a hoof around her, pulling her close as Trixie began, one more time, to cast the T-petrification spell.
Instead of just throwing the spell at her, I'm just going to have to hold it,
Trixie thought, keeping her breath saying as she worked the spell into existence, slowly casting the magic out into Picturesque. Holding the magic in place around Picturesque, Trixie carefully began to examine the aura of magic, both hers and that of the basilisk. What she intended to do was a little beyond what she normally tried with her spells. She was used to experimenting with her magic, refining the same spell with countless castings, even modifying her familiar spells slightly to suit her needs. It was part of why her illusions were so good and versatile. But normally, that kind of thing took months of practice, with a spell she was already familiar with. Now, she was trying to do it inside a few minutes, with a spell she had just learned that morning. The idea was simple enough. The basilisk magic was acting up, behaving chaotically. Trixie's spell had slipped off before because of that. Now, she intended to hold the spell in place, and tried to alter the spell's shape in slight ways, adjust its form until it fit in with the chaotic surges. It began to go poorly almost immediately. The depetrification spell was being held over Picturesque, and much as before, those random colors, surging and spiking at seemingly random, would appear and keep the aura of the spell from taking effect. Trixie kept channeling, a slight overlay of blue aura over her horn glowing brighter as she focused on altering the spell, adjusting it to try and match the chaos. But it was like trying to fit a square block into space that kept changing size and shape, none of them remotely resembling a square. No matter how Trixie was twisting the spell, it just wouldn't take hold. She choked back her frustration. It would only distract her. She shoved aside the now all too familiar feeling of growing fatigue. No time to feel tired when a depressed filly's emotional state was on the line. Trixie's eyes became narrow slits, her face a hard mask of concentration as she continued to shift her own spell. Faster, more random, stretching the aura this way and that, trying to... Trixie blinked. She was trying to match a pattern, but the basilisk magic was acting without a pattern. Clearly, she was going about this the wrong way. Trixie smiled, giving up on trying to match her spell with the pattern of the basilisk petrification magic, and instead began to randomize her own spell's shape. Nothing that would change the spell's actual intent, but the aura itself she began to randomly shift, twist, and surge according to pure whim. In a way, it was like when she played with her illusions for practice. No real point or function to the illusions. She played with the magic of shape and form for pure enjoyment, to alleviate boredom, and to keep her skills sharp. But mostly because it was fun. She applied the same here, altering the threads of her spell in every which way as she let her whims go. No pattern or rhythm, just random whim. Gradually she began to relax, even under the strain of continuously holding the spell. Hard focus became fluid imagination as she let the spell's energy surge and spike without pattern, riding a knife's edge between maintaining the spell's function and allowing its shape to flow and shift like water. Trixie barely noticed when the spell suddenly sucked into picturesque fully, the magic interlocking with the magic infused in the basilisk stone. For just a second, Trixie and the chaotic magic of the basilisk were connected, as she felt a horrible backlash of pure, sickly nausea run through her mind. Whispers, harsh, loud, a cacophony of random voices babbling incoherently surged through her, and she didn't even feel herself fall on her haunches. It was only when Sheath gave her a rough shake on the shoulder that Trixie managed to blink back to awareness. Sheath was looking at her, his features swirling with a mix of relief and happiness that he seemed to be trying hard to keep bottled and remain looking stoic, which he was failing at. Trixie looked past the stallion. Slowly, Trixie found herself smiling, feeling a little wetness on her eyes that she fairly quickly wiped away. She didn't want to look like she was crying after all. Buzzle was wrapped in her mother's arms, picturesque, flesh and blood once more, held her daughter tightly. Both were crying. Buzzle was smiling wide while she did so, and Picturesque had a closed-eyed expression of pure joy on her face, with tears sliding down her cheeks.
Mama, Mama.
Buzzle kept saying over and over again. Picturesque slowly stroked her daughter's mane.
There, honey. It's okay. We're okay.
Trixie got to her host, giving Sheath a look that said,
I'll just, give you three some privacy.
As he turned to leave, she felt Sheath's hoof on her shoulder. Thank you. Whatever else may happen between us before all this is over, thank you. Trixie just nodded dumbly, adjusting her hat to hide her own slightly embarrassed look under the brim, and trotted out of the house to give the family a little space and time to themselves. Besides, she was still feeling dizzy from her brief contact with that chaotic magic and needed some air. Outside, the evening sky had grown darker, the mostly clear sky turning from bright blue to a deep cerulean. The sun was already low enough that it was partially hidden beyond the hills to the west save for a few stubborn rays of gold. The air was cool and crisp against Trixie's hide, as he took in a slow, deep breath to steady herself. Carrie Picturesque might have seen a small thing against the large laundry list of issues left to be solved for Oaton, but it was a victory she desperately needed to get some confidence back. Seeing Bushel smile, it had been more than enough to energize her for what was to come.
I still have an hour or two before it gets totally dark. More than enough to reach the Lumber Guild's camp. I can't do anything for the Threshers right now, but knowing that it was a spell that turned into stone is helpful. It's the closest we've come so far to actual evidence of foul play.
She had nothing against Oaton's mayor, and as being just such gratitude from him, she did feel a tad guilty about this. But the bottom line is he had been acting suspicious. Evasive about why Oaton never registered itself with the Night Court's municipal records. Defensive about the oddities of the forest near his village. And he seemed to know more about Tarnish than he logically should. Trixie doubted she'd get anywhere by confronting him directly about those matters. With the enchanted glasses in Cheerilee's possession, there was no chance to use them later to try and get clues. Trixie was fairly convinced this whole matter was going to be done with one way or another by the end of tonight. That left a slight possibility that as she searched his rooms at his home, she might turn something up. She shook her head with a little rueful chuckle under her breath, tossing a hoof to her hat.
Or I could just write Princess Luna and beg and plead for some pony with more authority than me to come up with this whole mess so I can go home, go to bed, and sleep for a week straight.
It was a nice thought, but ultimately, she knew she couldn't just turn to the princess to solve this problem. Not unless she had some serious evidence of foul play taking place here in Oaton. The Threshers being turned to stone by a spell was certainly evidence of something going on, and magic of that type was indeed illegal. But it didn't construe as solid proof of a specific crime, nor did it specifically point a hoof at anypony as a culprit. The situation just didn't warrant the kind of emergency you calling in the Princess of the Night for. Perhaps a little update letter, just to let her know what was going on. Maybe ask for advice wouldn't be a bad idea. In fact, Luna could probably send her a spell scroll with a method to counter the spell on the Threshers. Trixie could just tell Luna to take the cost out of her next stipend. Feeling positively proactive, Trixie glanced briefly back at the house where Bussel and her parents were. No reason to interrupt what was probably a very emotional moment for them. Besides, she didn't quite feel up to talking with Bussel. The filly was happy with her mother back. Trixie didn't want to ruin that by having to tell Bushel she wasn't really the grand hero the filly had come to Ponyville to find.
I'll tell her after all this is done, after I've kept my promise to her.
As she quickly trotted back to the tavern, she passed only a few other ponies, the villagers turning in early, wanting to get inside in case the Basilisk returned. Those she did trot by gave her looks that ranged from smiles to simply looking away. She couldn't blame them. The future of their village probably wasn't nearly as secure as they thought it was just the other day. She wondered if curing picturesque would help boost their morale some, even if the Threshers were still stoned. Well, if Princess Luna provided a counterspell, that problem would be solved pretty quick. And on top of that, she'd be able to question the Threshers as to what happened to them. Trixie felt her steps get a bit more bounce to them, as she finally felt like some progress was about to be made. She get a mystery crackling clue out of the Threshers, and thus armed, go to the Lumbergill camp, infiltrate it, and get to the bottom of everything before Taurus even arrives with her silly basilisk. Then Trixie, the soon-to-be great and powerful, would catch the crazy mare responsible for all of this with the aid of her stalwart friends and get the copper coins to pull the Lumbergill off Oaton's land. Oaton would be saved, Bussel's faith in her would be proven justified, and Trixie could finally go home and get some sleep, secure in the knowledge that she was worth the friendship that had been strong enough to call forth the elements of harmony. Except her hat wasn't working. She was in the guest room in Sheaf's home above the tavern, having just penned a letter to Luna, explaining the situation and how the princess didn't need to do anything, and Trixie had everything well in hoof. Just needed a counterspell, and had tossed the scroll into her hat with a satisfied smile on her face. Only to blink when there wasn't a corresponding poof of magic indicating the spell scroll had been sent away. When she upended her hat, the scroll fell out and popped to the floor with a dull little thud.
No,
she said, peeking into her hat with one eye. She shook it.
No, no, no!
The hat didn't respond to her shaking, and with a small vein popping out of her forehead, Trixie almost shoved her head into her hat as she sighed.
This is not happening! You! I intended you myself! You've been working perfectly forever! What's wrong?
She recovered from her outburst enough to activate her magic sight and examine her hat, only to find herself completely befuddled. The enchantment spell on her hat was gone? Why was the spell gone? It didn't make any sense. Enchantment didn't just vanish, at least not ones that were designed to be permanently anchored. Not unless someone or something dispelled it. But who? How? Nobody had been anywhere near her hat except her and Bushel? That was impossible. There was no way the Earth Pony filly could have done something to her hat. Wait, her hat had been returned to her after Trixie had been passed out. Any pony could have touched it during that time. But the only pony who could have touched it while having any ability to affect the magic on it would have been Mayor Sheath. Why would he dispel her hat, though? Assuming he somehow discovered what it is, possibly using magic sight similar to her own. The only reason to remove the enchantment on her hat would be to prevent Trixie from contacting any pony.
I can re-enchant the hat, but that'd take half the night. I don't have time! Why? Why would Sheaf want to keep me from sending word to any pony outside of Oaton? He couldn't have known the hat spell sends things straight to Princess Luna's desk. He just knows it sent things somewhere. This doesn't add up. Sheaf clearly wants Oaton to be safe, suspicious behavior or not. Why make it harder for me to do that?
Trixie's eyes narrowed. She was so tired of getting jerked around by all these little mysteries. With a determined huff, she took her hat up in a field of levitating magic and stuck it firmly atop her head. Her nostrils flared with a snort as she turned toward the door. All right, Trixie. No more mysteries. No more fake clues. Time to get to the bottom of this. Time to find the truth. Bushel was crying a little. They were good tears, though, so she didn't mind them so much. She and her mother were still embracing, but they both calmed somewhat, and Picturesque was stroking her mane, while at the same time trying to give Bushel an astonishing look. You are in so much trouble, little lady, Picturesque said, though the effect was somewhat ruined by the soft tone of voice he used. What were you thinking? Running out of the house when you were specifically told to stay inside? She said, a small, uncharacteristic smirk on.
Perhaps, dear, you don't have much room to talk. I seem to recall telling you to stay inside and watch the foals.
Picturesque's face reddened. I suppose not doing what we're told is a family trait. I was worried about you, dear, so I went outside to make sure, but then I saw Bushel. I'm sorry, Ma, Bushel said, recalling that horrifying moment when the basilisk's eyes had been fixed upon her. She still didn't quite know what that weird feeling was that had overcome her then, but it seemed a small thing in comparison to the memory of her mother breaking the gaze, protecting her. I'm sorry you got hurt. Oh, my little Bushel, it didn't hurt. I'm just glad you're safe, and I'm okay now. Thanks to Miss Trixie. Speaking of which, where has she gone off to? I'd like to thank her, dear.
She jerked his head toward the door. She left to allow us some time on our own. I don't think that mare is used to emotional moments. He poked his head out the door, looking around. I don't see her around. She may have already left town.
Left town? Bushel asked, her eyes wide. Not left town, right?
No, said Sheaf. Not that. I mean, she's probably gone to the Lumber Guild camp. She and her friends are trying to find one last time to get our water back.
Bushel pushed away from her mother and made for the door, but her father moved to stop her, a stern look coming over her features.
And where do you think you're going, little missy?
I have to catch up to Trixie, Bushel said. I had to tell her I'm sorry, too. I doubted her, and I saw in her face how much that hurt her. I have to let her know I still believe in her.
I'm sure she knows that already, honey, said Picturesque. Slowly came up to Bushel, draping a comforting arm around the shaking filly.
But what if she doesn't? Cried Bushel. What if she still thinks I don't like her anymore, and that distracts her while she's dealing with those mean Lumbergill ponies, or that basilisk monster?
Bushel, her father said, tone reassuring but firm. Trixie will do what she has to do, and whatever comes from that, you'll get your chance to speak to her. She might have things to tell you, too. Until then, you're going to behave, be a good villain, and not give us any more trouble. You're still grounded. Dear, are you okay? Picturesque nodded. I'm fine, love. Don't worry. Just a little tired, but that's the worst of it. Bushel wasn't sure, but it seemed like her father flustered in worry. But it passed quickly, before he put on a warm smile of the kind Bushel hadn't seen on his face in quite a long time. Lan, let's go home. Trixie was walking like a mare on a mission, her violet eyes fixated on the path in front of her, a light with a drive that would give pause to any pony who thought to bar her way. The road to the Lumbergill's camp was empty, however, so there was no pony to appreciate the effect. Trixie snorted, annoyed some part of her still wanted to have annoyance. With almost a violent mental push, she pushed away the very notion. This wasn't about proving anything anymore. Before the camp's palisade even came into view, she wove her invisibility spell and sound dampening spell around herself. It was only now just getting to dusk, with the sky a vivid purple gradually turning to the deep cerulean of night. The sun was already down, and Luna's moon was rising into the sky, amid the welcoming carpet of stars appearing to greet it. It was the perfect time to infiltrate the camp, as few ponies could resist looking up at such a sky. And Trixie imagined she could have walked through the gates if they had been open, and no pony would have even noticed. The gates were closed, however, by a very familiar pair.
You know what? Your sis could stand to loosen up some.
Said Buthiel, the stallion's face sporting some impressive bruises that didn't seem to dampen his good spirits.
Yeah, never gonna get herself a mare if she's too scared to ask even one up for once. Yeah, it's not like I disagree with you,
said Lock and Key, the small unicorn stallion who had his sister's rusty coat color, but a honey blonde mane in contrast to his sister's black one, looking a bit morose.
but you could have said something a little less direct than grow a pair and snog the Pegasus already. Why do you care about Cut's love life anyway? Hey, I'm just looking out for the well-being of my fellow guards' happiness,
said Buthiel, while putting a hoof to his chest and adopting a look of sincerity, lightly glazed with a cocksure grin.
My love sentence detected your sis hots for that Pegasus mare right off the bat, and I'm going to try and help her along the path to carnal fulfillment with some of my sage advice. I think Cut disagreed with your definition of sage advice,
Lock and Key then sighed.
though I do wish she stopped being so embarrassed about it. She's always been like that, flattering any time she sees some part she likes. That's what I'm saying.
Buthiel jabbed a hoof and shook her around to emphasize his words.
Life's too short for wishy-washy embarrassment. Sometimes you just gotta take life by the love flanks and give it a good all-night thrusting and soak it in your burning passion. Could have done with the imagery there. Really could have done without the imagery.
Trixie was now officially done listening into that conversation. Though the gate was closed and clearly locked, she was far from discouraged. She just needed to give the guards a reason to open the gate. Moving to the side of the gate, she looked around for a decent-sized rock to levitate. She wove a short-duration invisibility spell over the rock, then raised the rock up and floated over the wall. Levitating an object didn't require direct line of sight, as Trixie could still feel her magic and its grip on the rock without seeing it. But she basically had to do guesswork on the rock's location once it was out of view. Fortunately, she was a decent judge of distances. There was a knock on the other side of the gate, courtesy of Trixie's invisible floating rock.
Who's that?
Asked Lock and Key, turning his head toward the gate.
That you, Street Cloud? Your shift doesn't start yet, does it? Street Cloud?
Trixie had crept up back toward the gate, while Lock and Key and Buthiel exchanged glances. Buthiel shrugged, and with his mouth, pulled a key from a pouch, dealt it to the side of his chainmail barding, and unlocked the gate, hoofing it open. Trixie had already discarded the rock, and as the two guards looked around in confusion and defected there was no pony there who could have knocked on the gate, Trixie herself slid past them and into the camp.
Weird. You heard the knock too, right?
Asked Lock and Key.
Sure did. Probably one of the guild ponies trying to pull the prank on us. Yeah, guess none of them are too fond of us, are they? Real shame. They're so sort of getting right back to this place. Some of their mares are pretty smoking. Lumber work really tends to lead to some tight, well-defined flanks. Berthiel, I have to ask, is your direct approach ever gotten a response other than a slap to the face? Nope. Which is now how I know. The day it does work, I found the mare I'm going to marry. I can't even comment on that.
Trixie left that conversation far behind, and she quickly made her way deeper into the camp, not bothering to slow her steps, trusting fully to her magic to keep her hidden as she went. She had two targets in mind. The big central building where Cheerilee had found that map and notes, and the locked cabins that Sawdust had been so evasive about during her fake inspection. However, she lacked Cheerilee's faculty with persuading locks to open, so, if she wanted to get into the cabins, she needed to find a key. She imagined that if anypony had the key, it'd be Sawdust, who was probably somewhere in the big central building. As she made a swift canter toward the living building, she noticed that the camp wasn't entirely bedded down for the night. Some of the cabins had lights on inside, and she could hear the sounds of ponies enjoying some late-night evening games of dice, and even some light singing, the sounds of ponies relaxing after a hard day of work. It oddly enough reminded her of how the ponies of Oaton sounded after they'd been done with a day in the fields. Take away the conflict of interest, and all these ponies would probably get on just fine with the folk of Oaton. Just hard-working ponies trying to make a living. So stupid they can't just work together towards some mutual prosperity. Tucking away that little thought before he could get her downing her plan, Trixie picked up her pace. With night falling, she didn't know how long before Torrance would make her move. Coming up to the door of the camp's main building, she paused and listened, not hearing much of anything. She lightly jiggled the handle with a hoof, and was a little surprised to find the door unlocked. Probably figured they had enough guards at the gate and on the palisade, not to mention up in that tower, to worry about locking a door to what looked to be essentially a big dining chamber. Trixie quietly slipped inside, making sure that there was no pony around to see the door seemingly open and close on its own. She took another look around just to make sure the large dining area was completely empty before moving further inside. Long wooden tables filled most of the space, lined up with just enough room to walk between them. Either side of the room's far end held a set of stairs leading to the next floor. Trixie made for a set on the right side, stopping at the foot of stairs and listening. Trixie could hear the creaking and muffled sounds of hoofsteps from the second floor, but it was hard to tell where it was coming from. Trixie raised a hoof to the silver ear clasp she wore and whispered, "Raindrops! Cheerilee! I'm inside the camp's main building. Cheerilee! If you're not in position to talk, just cough or something." Raindrops had nearly been startled off her cloud when Trixie's voice had suddenly spoken up in her ear. It had been a very long, cold, and boring wait for the Jasmine Pegasus. As he waited atop a stressed-out, fluffy cloud, she kept lazily hovering over the forest near the lumber yard. The night was shaping up to be a frosty one, and she shivered a bit, rubbing her hose together to generate a little heat. Hearing Trixie's voice, she put a hoof to her own earpiece, whispering, "Is it safe to use these while Cheerilee's in there too, Trixie? Can't other ponies hear your own voice?" "No. The sound projects into your own mind. Only those very deep class can hear what's being said between them." "Why are you whispering, then?" "Well, I still have to talk. Others might not be able to hear your response, but they'll hear me talking if I don't keep it down. Same reason I want Cheerilee to just cough if she's with some pony and can't speak freely. Cheerilee? You there?" When there wasn't any response, Raindrops frowned and could imagine Trixie doing the same. "Could she have taken the earpiece off?" "Possibly. I don't know why she would. Blast it! We don't need more complications. Did you see where she might have gone while you were watching the camp?" Raindrops nodded, then glanced when she realized Trixie couldn't see and said, "Yeah. After she was let in by the gate by that Count Shiny guy, she followed him into that big building at the back of the camp. Same one you're in now. Haven't seen either of them leave it since then." "I'll try to find her then. You wait there and keep an eye out for that basilisk. Tell me the second you see anything suspicious."
Raindrops sighed in frustration. Yay! More waiting.
"Shiny, I understand you might have a few reservations about fully trusting me. What with the whole breaking into your camp, and then your office, and then being up one of your guards,"
Cheerilee said as she wiggled her hose in the tightrope bindings around them.
"But is this really necessary? You didn't have to let me back into the camp if this is how you really felt after all."
She was in a comfortably furnished bedroom, with a nightstand next to a decent-sized bed. A desk and dresser set up on the wall, just next to the window, looking down onto the camp's main thoroughfare. Her forelegs and hind legs were separately bound, the forelegs behind her to the back of the wood chair she was sitting on, and her hind legs to the chair herself. Seemed all rather silly to her. As he broke the wood chair, then all Shiny would have accomplished by tying her up was to arm her with wood clubs tied to her legs. But violence was the furthest thing from Cheerilee's mind. She hadn't even resisted when Shiny ordered his guards to restrain her. Right now, Shiny was pacing back and forth in front of her, giving her nervous glances he didn't quite know what to do with her now that she was tied up. At her words he grimaced, his tone almost apologetic as it was flustered. His stutter was back in full force. I I let you into the camp because I already knew what happened in Oaton. The TARDIS set that beast of hers on the loose, and there was no doubt in my mind she was after you. This is what I was afraid of going to happen, Cheerilee. It's why I wanted you to leave in the first place. But now it's too late. TARDIS is going to be completely focused on you. So come here. That's fine. I can trap her here. It just puts more ponies at risk than I would have liked. You especially. You're tied up so you don't do anything stupid when TARDIS arrived. I'll deal with her. Cheerilee flicked her ear, wishing she could have responded to Trixie and Raindrops earlier. But bound as she was, she couldn't raise a hoof to touch the earpiece still cast to her. She imagined if she just broke the chair to do that, Shiny would react poorly, and maybe use manacles next time. Though honestly, all that would do is slow her down slightly. She gave her old friend a simple smile, hoping to calm him down. I came back so I could help you talk her down, Shiny. I can't do that if I'm tied up here. Guilt. It ran through her as she grit her teeth against it. She wanted to help Shiny and Tarnus both, but ultimately Trixie's plan did count for capturing Tarnus themselves, and using that to force Shiny to leave Oaton alone. She still needed to conform Shiny's plans. If he was really smuggling protected animal species, she wanted to know why he'd do something so drastic. He was so focused on Tarnus, though, it was hard to steer a conversation in that direction. Talk her down? You think you could just talk my sister down? Just like that? Even when I, her own brother, couldn't? The Blue Earth pony was near shouting, his cream-colored mane falling across his face in a way that got Cheerilee noticing how disheveled he'd become. Shiny looked like he hadn't been sleeping. Cheerilee ought to know the signs. Trixie looked very much the same the other day. Shiny, get a hold of yourself. I'm your friend. I want to help. I know everything that's happening here to do that. I need to know the whole truth. Shiny was taking in a few deep breaths, but gave her a hard look, as if he was trying to peer into her mind. Cheerilee thought about enchanted glasses sitting in her saddlebags, which had been tossed by Shiny in a corner of her room. If she could have constructed a reason to have those on right now, she wondered what she'd be seeing in her old friend's head. Truth. You want the truth. He had a bitterness in his tone, and a desperation, his shoulders slumping. Fine. Here it is. The Copper Coin family is less than a year from losing all its titles and lands. Cheerilee balked, blinking several times. Come again? It's the depths, mother and father. They've been spending our family coffers into spiraling debt for years. Shiny shook his head. I finally turned old enough to properly take on the mantle as the scion of the house, and I find we owe bits to everybody. Everybody? Everybody! Shiny's voice was equally parts fury and despair, the emotion seeming to drown out his own stutter. Barons, viscounts, justices, and even simple pages! My parents have borrowed bits from every bloody thrice-cursed noble in the Night Court! And not just our fellow nobles, oh no, they've borrowed bits from every money-lender from New Pegasus to Main Haven! Even private companies like the Apple Trust has money owed to them. We owe money to ponies who make their living kicking trees! I think the colloquial term is bucking trees. Not the point, Cheerilee! He sat down on his haunches, looking drained. Cheerilee, with little hopping motions, moved herself in the chair and all over to him. She couldn't really hug him per se, but she laid her head down to sort of nuzzle his cheek. Shiny seemed almost not to notice as he whispered, I'm inheriting a lifetime of debt, an impossible mess to fix, a great sister, and a responsibility to somehow make it right to the ponies of my province and the ones who served me. Is it that bad? Yes. Yes, it is. My family is going to be completely out of every single bit we have by the end of the year. And if all those debts are called in, well, the territory will likely get ceded to the noble who holds the greatest share of our debt. but my family can overlook the future of a destitute living. Even if I get Thomas back, I won't be able to offer her a return to any kind of proper lifestyle. And what of all the employees who rely on us? Not even those who will directly serve me, but all those numerous ponies who live in our territory and feel the pinch of this debt. I somehow have to fix it all. It's all on me. Cheerilee couldn't help herself anymore, and wrapped her hose around him in a hug. It took Shining a few seconds to blink at that, and look at the now unbound ropes laying on the floor. How did you? Why am I even surprised? You did break out even if I threw you in a cell, wrapped you up in a manacle's sack, and threw away the key to the ocean. To help a friend? Definitely, Cheerilee confirmed. I should have told you about Thomas years ago, before I ever even got to this point. You didn't want me to abandon my studies, which I would have to try and find your sister. You know me pretty well, Shiny. I wish I knew you better, he whispered, and Cheerilee gave him an odd look, to which he pushed her away a bit, composing himself, forcing away his stutter. But I suppose that's the trade that left us station long ago. Now, I still owe you answers, and I may as well get out of this doubt before your friend Trixie does something stupid. I told you, for Trixie and Raindrops left back to Ponyville. Cheerilee, you're not bad at lying, but don't insult me, alright? I knew the moment you showed up at the gate again that you and your adamant friends were up to something. I want you to be safe, so I didn't question the obvious lie. Now that Harness is focused on you, you're safest here where my guards can protect you. Going to stop a guess that you're supposed to be bait for Thomas. Trixie planning on swooping in and capturing my sister before I can. Cheerilee found herself dumbly nodding at him, voice not hiding her surprise. You figured it out, huh? Trixie Lulamoon isn't the hardest man to predict. Honestly, though, she has surprised me in this case, Shiny said with a grudging shrug. I thought by now she'd given up. Once these days until her life became obvious. Her reputation in the night court suggests she's stupid and kind of a coward. So I figured she'd run once the danger of the basilisk became obvious. I'd like to know what pony spread this reputation of hers, muttered Cheerilee, so I could give them a proper talking to. Trixie isn't the same mare she was before coming to Ponyville. I am starting to see that. Still, this plan of hers wasn't hard to see through, as really, at this point, she's out of options. If she wants me off of Oaton's back, it takes something like hanging Thomas in front of me like a carrot, and you went along with this plan. There was an undercurrent of hurt and accusation in his tone as he looked at her. Cheerilee flinched, her illiterate guilt returning. I'm sorry about that. I want Tarnish safe as much as you, but what you're doing to Oaton is wrong. I wanted to find out why. Why you built that dam again, and why it looks like you're smuggling a endangered species. So to be surprised from what you stole from my office, he muttered, then chuckled. You're quite a prominent admirer in Boothville, by the way. I don't think I've ever seen a stallion with a bruise that gnaws a smile, hardly. No changing the subject, Shining, Cheerilee said, but found herself chuckling lightly as well. While she had no interest in a stallion like Boothville these days, she couldn't deny that she'd run into him 8 or 9 years ago. Well, who knew what might have come from that? Shining was silent for a moment, apparently gathering his thoughts. Yes, I am using this cup and the redirected liver to smuggle animals to Huffington. Cockatrices this time, mostly. Quite a few manticores coming through as well. This whole scheme was originally Sawblades, the old leader of the Lumber Guild. He set all this up a year ago as a quick-rich scheme. But it all fell apart because of Trixie Lulamoon and my sister's interference. Harness was trying to free the animals smuggled. Trixie was just trying to be a drunk force of chaos. Either way, the Lumber Guild lost its leadership. It would have gone under if I hadn't snatched it up myself. My family's debt was so large, a little bit more to acquire the Lumberguild stock wasn't such a big deal, and I recognized the chance to earn a lot of bits using Sawblade's own scheme myself. I needed his son's help to get it all set up, though. It won't come close to erasing my family's debt, but it's a start. The ponies who run this whole operation are testing me, seeing how reliable I am. If I put off this smuggling ring for a year, I can be trusted with doing bigger things. More bits involved. The bonus is that the animals would act as a way to draw tourists out of these blasted woods. The ponies behind the smuggling don't care what else I do in this area, as long as I get the goods delivered, after all. So I'm ready to go after my sister and make bits at the same time.
Ponies? Who's behind all this?
Cheerilee, you ought to know more than most that the kind of ponies I'm working with now don't give their names and don't put titles to their groups. Crime in Ecclesia doesn't exist, remember? We're a peaceful little utopia of happiness and rainbows, except for when we're not. The ponies make their beats off of anything that isn't happiness and rainbows, prefer to stay anonymous and out of sight. Instead, they get desperate or gullible types like me, to take all the risk, so if something goes wrong, you're the ones who take the fall, not them.
Then back out, Shiny, Cheerilee said. It's not too late to come clean and put a stop to this. We can deal with your family step some other way.
Really? You have 2.6 million bits lying around your house? School teachers are paid better than I thought.
2.6? Cheerilee mentally calculated a few variables. Just what have your parents been spending away all that money on?
Tourneys, festivals, and additional summer and winter homes in Latigo and Cavallo, respectively. An entire army worth of additional servants we don't need. Oh, and let's not forget the pet projects with my mother's obsession with alchemy and father's interest in collecting random archaeological artifacts. He spent $200,000 alone on opening that pointless museum last month. It's like he didn't even grasp that the bits he was spending on had to come from somewhere. So yes, before you press further, I'm ready to risk jail and the dubious morality of working with Equestria seething underbelly, if it means having a shot at putting enough of a dent in that debt to make sure my family doesn't fall apart. Sorry, Cheerilee.
Cheerilee shook her head. No, I'm sorry. Sorry that your parents put you in that kind of position. But this isn't going to work, Shiny. You said it yourself. These ponies are using you, so you could take the fall if you're caught, as you will be, sooner or later, even if it isn't Trixie that exposes all of this to the authorities. If you give this up now, we can protect you. We can think of something.
Give me a sort of option, and rather than just think of something, and I'll consider it. Right now, I'm following the only path I can see to get my sister back and save my family from debt.
He paused, eyes locked on hers, a desperation underlying the hardness he was trying to put into them.
Please, Cheerilee, give me another way out.
Cheerilee met his look, suddenly feeling the memory ears of flashing into her mind when she first met the shy, yet passionate noble stallion before her. He'd been so fiercely against his little sister, hanging out with a mare of ill repute, like Cheerilee, had all manner of choice words with her, threatened to have her thrown behind bars if Cheerilee kept dragging Turnus along any more wild escapades. It'd been cute, the way he stood up for his sister's well-being, despite clearly being terrified, knees shaking, voice stirring, so clearly out of his depth in confronting her, yet fired up to press on for the sake of his sister. Cheerilee had admired that spark. It was there now. Shiny wasn't going to back down from this path, not as long as he believed it was his only chance to protect his family. She sighed sadly, shaking her head. I've already tried giving you one, and you're not taking it.
Then, there's nothing left for us to say to each other.
I suppose there isn't.
The silence hung thickly between them for a moment. Then, Shiny Covered Coin turned sharply toward the door.
Opening it, Cheerilee could see the rust-colored unicorn mare cut and dry, waiting patiently like a stone sentinel out in the hallway.
Cut and Dry looked at Cheerilee's unbound hooves and made to step forward, but Shining raised his own hoof. Leave her. I should have known better than to even try keeping her bound. There's assured she doesn't leave that room. Use force if needed, but don't cause any permanent harm.
As my lord wishes. What of your suspicions concerning her companions?
The Unicorn Mayor was clearly tense. He kept eyeing Cheerilee cautiously. No doubt she was well aware of what Cheerilee had done to her fellow guard. They're likely already either inside the camp or nearby, waiting for my sister to strike. We'd only waste time trying to search for them. I must go ensure our trap for Tarnus is prepared. I'll send Boothia to relieve you soon, as I'll need your magic at my side against Tarnus.
My lord, perhaps Boothia would not be the best choice to watch our guest. He's already proven unable to deal with her effectively.
Shining tapped his chin, nodding. Point taken. Your brother then shall accompany him. Those two seem to have a rapport, and neither are critical for trapping my sister. Cut and Dry put a hoof to her chest and salute.
Very well. Do be swift in sending them to relieve me, my lord. I don't wish to be absent from your side when the time comes.
Shining had a smile on his face when he left Cut and Dry alone with Cheerilee. The rust-cutted unicorn entering the room and closing the door behind her with a soft white glow of magic. Cut and Dry eyed the rope bindings still on Cheerilee's hind legs, and after a second undid them with her magic. Cheerilee smiled at her and got up from the chair, stretching all four hooves.
Thank you. That position rather was uncomfortable. Don't know how Lyra does it all the time.
I didn't do it to make you uncomfortable,
said Cut and Dry curtly, jaw tightening. Cheerilee's eyebrow perked up.
Did I do something to upset you?
No.
Well, you're certainly acting like I have.
Cut and Dry remained silent, staring at Cheerilee, while standing at guard in front of the door. Cheerilee's eyebrow went even higher as she shuffled over to the bed and stretched out on it. She noticed Cut and Dry tensed, and as an experiment, Cheerilee stretched out even more and laid out on the bed like she was going to sleep on it.
What are you doing?
Cut and Dry's starved voice said.
Just thought I'd take a nap.
Then do so on the floor. You shouldn't be messing up my lord's bed.
Cheerilee pondered.
You're very loyal to Shiny, aren't you?
I am,
Cut and Dry said, eyes glaring at Talons.
Unlike some ponies.
Are you talking about me?
Cheerilee asked honestly.
You were his friend once, correct?
I was. Am. I'm still his friend.
Cheerilee said emphatically.
Then why are you opposing him? Why are you causing him to doubt his actions with your very presence? If you and that blue nag keep interfering, you do not understand what will happen? That my lord is risking everything he has, his future and freedom, to save his family? You stand against this, and have the gall to still call yourself his friend? You should be thankful he still holds you in such high regard. Otherwise I'd...
Cut and Dry was trembling and barely contained rage. Cheerilee smiled brightly.
I'm glad.
What?
I'm just glad, you know. Back in the day, Shining was always doubting himself. Always worried he'd never be worth his family's title. I'll admit, back then, I kind of doubted it myself. I mean, he was just a shy type, always nervous and visiting. It's good to see that he's grown to be the kind of pony that inspires loyalty like yours. I sincerely believe he could lead his family out of his debt without resorting to becoming a criminal. I'm wondering why you don't.
I doubt nothing about my lord,
Cut and Dry said.
Then why are you letting himself lower to being used by criminals?
It's not my place to question my lord's wishes. He's doing what he feels best.
Cheerilee made a small sound to that, turning over on the bed, and propped her legs on her forelegs like they were pillows. Cut and Dry grunted in annoyance, but didn't seem interested in further chastising Cheerilee. The schoolteacher, for her part, contemplated what she learned. What Shining was doing was wrong, even if he had the right reasons to do it. Stopping him would probably mean him ending up in jail. Best case scenario for Tarnus was a long stay in a mental hospital, possibly also followed by jail time for endangering equestrian citizens. The Copper Coin family as a whole would be left to crumble under the weight of its debts.
the whole Providence suffering the repercussions of another noble family taking over the lands. Cheerilee knew stopping Shiny's plans was supposed to be the right thing to do. So, why did the thought make her chest feel so tight? Trixie pressed herself against the wall as Count Shiny Copper Coin walked past her. She caught some of the conversation between him and the unicorn guardsmare of his. Sounded like Cheerilee was okay, but being closely watched. Hopefully she had gotten some useful information out of Shining. But with that guardsmare there, Trixie wasn't going to be able to speak with her. Trixie considered following Shiny to try to find out what else he had in store for Tarnis's arriving. But she hadn't forgotten the main reason she was here was to try and dig up concrete evidence of what he was up to and investigate Sawdust. Silently moving down the hallway, she began to make her way toward where Cheerilee had described the map room was. As she went, she whispered a message to Raindrops.
Found Cheerilee. She's fine. Just being closely watched by the Count's guards.
Good to know she's all right. Everything's still quiet out here, and not in the too quiet manner either. Only thing odd I'm seeing are more guards on the palisade than there were last time we were here.
Trixie paused, thinking. She hadn't noticed any additional guards, but she didn't have Raindrops' vantage point, and Trixie hadn't been too closely at the palisade.
Must be expecting Tarnis just like we are. I've got to make this fast.
Raindrops didn't reply to that, and was thus too as well. Trixie had reached the hallway with the map room. Trixie didn't see anypony around, but the door opposite to that one, led to the map room, had a soft orange light flickering from the bottom crack. Trixie briefly listened to it, but couldn't hear anything. She shrugged and went for the map room, quietly raising the hinges in her sound dampening spell to keep them from squeaking as she opened. Once inside, she closed the door and turned to the table. She frowned. The table was clear. No map to be seen. All the shelving Cheerilee had described was there, but there were only a hoofful of scrolls and paperwork left. Checking them, Trixie discovered they were completely mundane ledgers and work schedules. Anything that even remotely tied to Shiny's smuggling of animals or a search for Tarnis. He must have moved them after Cheerilee had broken in there. Trixie didn't let this deter her. It wasn't as if this was all that surprising. No doubt, the vital and incriminating stuff had been moved somewhere more secure. Leaving the now former map room, Trixie pondered the risk of sneaking into the place they were holding Cheerilee. Shouldn't be too hard to trick the guard Shiny had left long enough for Trixie to slip in, and with Cheerilee's help, it would be easy to search the room quickly. Her ears twitched as she heard voices coming from the other side of the door across from her, the one that had light coming from it. She slid up and pressed one ear against the door, trying to make out words. One of the voices sounded like Sawdust. You will. Did not anticipate. Unstable. The other voice was even fainter. It was a mare's voice, and it sounded familiar. Trixie couldn't place it, but she's sure she heard this mare's voice, and recently.
Don't worry. Please. Please.
Now it was Sawdust's voice again. Toned that same calm, smoothly confident voice he had held during the inspection. Work. Count Shining will. No matter what we win. Trixie frowned.
We win? Who? That mare's voice again. So familiar. Now sounding unsure.
Trixie was now pressing her ear so hard against the door it almost hurt, but she still couldn't catch more than a few words.
Too much. Can't let. Threshers latent.
Threshers? Trixie couldn't help herself. It was worth the risk. Using her sound dampening spell again on the door hinges, she began to open it, catching part of Sawdust's reply much clearer now. We didn't have much of a choice. I told you I'd fix them as soon as... Wait a moment. For a second, the mayor's voice said, Sawdust, well... But it was cut off abruptly. Trixie had the door open a crack, but closed it just as quickly. Not sure how, but suspecting Sawdust had somehow realized he was being listened in on. She backed away from the door and crouched down, even though she was invisible. A second later, Sawdust opened the door and looked out. The purple unicorn with his blue mane was still partially covered by his bowler cap. He sat near that sleepy, closed-eyed look, relaxed even as he glanced left and right down either end of the hallway. For a moment, Trixie swore he looked right at her,
But then his eyes simply moved as he scanned the hallway. Then, with a soft little huff of air, he turned back into the room. While he swung the door behind him, Trixie noticed it didn't click closed all the way. It hung slowly open slightly. She blinked, having a hard time believing her luck. She crept forward, trying to peek inside. It was clearly a combination office and bedroom, with a table neatly stacked papers sitting practically alongside a simple utilitarian bed. Sawdust was standing at another desk along the wall, looking at something set up on the desk, a bowl of some kind. His hat was still on, but Trixie noticed a blue glow wreathing the bowl, so imagined his horn must be channeling magic underneath the hat. Soon, the mayor's voice returned, clearer now. Trixie found her mouth, slowly gaping open as he recognized it.
Sawdust, what happened? You dropped the connection.
I thought I heard something, but it must have been my imagination. Now, as I was saying, I'll return the Threshers to normal once this is all over with, and I have an opportunity to ensure their memories are altered, so they won't remember seeing us.
You could have just used the spell to get in touch with me earlier. Meeting face to face wasn't necessary.
Oh, but how could I resist seeing my big sister and giving her a hug? It's not like your husband would allow me to come over for dinner and a chat. Not without rearranging my jawbone.
It doesn't have to be that way. You two used to be friends.
I think that friendship ended the day Father disowned you. Hard to forgive the stallion that ended such a promising career in photography because he couldn't control himself.
I was my choice as well, brother. Don't forget what happened. I'm happy here. I'm happy with Sheath. I have 3 beautiful foals. What more could I want?
Oh, so you're helping me because you are completely satisfied with your life? I thought the plan rather involved ensuring your foals had a future beyond being farmers.
I want them to have a choice, yes. What I don't want them is to lose their home or their mother. Sawdust, that basilisk,
That mayor of yours is out of control! As I said, Charles is more unstable than I anticipated. I didn't expect her to set that beast loose on Oaton like that. Something has aggravated her beyond her brother simply chasing her. Something to do with the elements of harmony. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't. They fought off the basilisk. For as much as Trixie claims to have lied to us, she certainly seems like a hero to me. She and her friends beat back that monster, and Trixie restored me back to normal. Brother, I think we should abandon this whole plan. It's too risky. I know you think you have all the angles covered like you always do, but this time, some point could get really hurt.
Fret not, sister. I have everything under control. You just keep working on convincing Sheath. Once Trixie gets rid of the copper coins for us, all we need is your husband's cooperation to make this whole plan come together perfectly. Oaton will rise in prosperity, you'll be able to start up your career again, and certainly my little nieces and nephew can look forward to a bright future. Just trust me.
I will.
Good. Sleep well. Picturesque. Now, if you excuse me, everybody, I'm going to say something that I think's all on your minds. Bum, bum, bum!